And we are live. Hello, everybody. To anyone and everyone who will be joining us, hopefully here. I am here with Godless Engineer. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh no, thank you for having me.
Yeah. First off, first question. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, I am John Gleason. I'm the Godless Engineer. I am a software engineer by day, I guess, as well as an atheist activist. At least that's how I characterize myself. I got started out on Facebook initially because I created my online persona, Godless Engineer, after some of my family members didn't like my worldview and how it was changing and how I was, expressing myself. And so I created my Facebook page, and from there, I started to gain a lot of traction. And I eventually made a YouTube channel, and I started putting out videos.
Okay. Were you religious before you became an atheist?
Oh yes, I was very much religious. I well, okay, so I started out pretty religious in the idea that I didn't really question it. Like I was religious, but I didn't really get that into it. Like there were a lot of times when I tried to get into the religion or whatnot, like going to like Wednesday night youth group, taking part in a Bible study, and all this other stuff. Like it was really just about having friends and like spending time with friends and away from home, rather than it was like actually about the religion. So while I tried to be really religious, I guess I was just sort of, oh, this is just how things are. You're a Christian or you're one of these other religions, but I'm a Christian. I believe this. And so it never dawned on me to really question that. But as soon as I started to question it, I just found that I couldn't, commit to the, uh, uh, I guess the faith part of it. Like I couldn't just have faith in it. Like for instance, with the Noah story, I'm like, there's no way he fit all of the animals on the ark or whatnot. When I was younger, I would just pass that up. But like when I started questioning it, I'm like, well, you need to have an answer for this thing or that thing. And when I found that religion didn't provide those answers, I looked outside of religion and I found that like scientific reasoning and scientific thought processes would actually give me the answers that I was looking for, or it would show me how well we don't know yet, but that's okay. And see, like in religion, it was never just okay to not know. You had to have an answer, and there was always an answer for one thing or another. And whether that be an actual answer or just, oh, we're leaving it up to God. And so I just didn't find those answers satisfying enough. And I found that when I started applying this scientific sort of reasoning and logic to my worldview, I found a lot more compelling answers.
Okay. What made you become an atheist?
Well, so the thing that really got me down the path of it was when my friend, we played softball together, and for a church, nonetheless, we were playing softball and we were in the parking lot. And I had been really struggling with the whole idea of believing in God and faith and everything. Like I was just like, well, I just feel like I need to be a better Christian. Like I got to go to church and all this other stuff, but it's so hard for me to go to church. And so my friend told me, if you don't believe the Bible 100%, then you're not really a Christian. Of course, now I know that to be like a no true Scotsman,
Yeah.
but at the time I was like, well, then I need to figure out what I believe. Like, what do I believe? And so that's when I started kind of applying the scientific thought and reasoning to my worldview, because for me, I knew that science was tries to describe the natural world around us, tries to describe our reality. So it only makes sense to try to use that to explain like what I believe. And so that's what really kind of convinced me, I guess, to start questioning. Of course, it was never one thing in particular that really got me to say, "Oh, hey, I'm an atheist." It got to the point where I was like, "Well, either I do believe or I don't believe." And I had to make that crucial choice of, well, I just really don't believe that a God exists. And there was like a time when I had to become okay with the idea of being an atheist, because before that I was like, there's no way I can be an atheist. That's just unheard of to be an atheist. And so it got to a point where I had to become okay with that. And once I was okay with that, it felt like a whole lot of guilt lifted up off my shoulders. Like I didn't feel guilty for not being a good Christian boy, whatever that means. Um, I felt so much relief after becoming okay with being an atheist. And for me, that was actually the hardest hurdle to get over, rather than actually reasoning my way to not believing in a God.
Yeah, that actually makes perfect sense. Kind of the same way. I think that's just because most people who become atheists, who are religious beforehand, is they're brought up with it. So your entire, I think it's mostly because, well, your entire world just got pulled out from under you, and now you're trying to figure out, well, which way is up? Where do I go? I don't even know anymore, and it's like, if this is wrong, what else is wrong? I mean, that was one of the biggest things. I was like, well, if my religious views are wrong, where else am I wrong at? What else am I getting wrong? And it's just, from there, it just becomes this. Once you get over that, it's like, oh, that was so easy. But the next question I have is, how hard is it to be an atheist in Alabama?
Well, it's a little bit easier, than one might think. Like it's not exactly like, the heart of Texas or Louisiana or something, or even Mississippi. Um, I live in North Alabama, which has a large number of like liberal and progressively minded people. So it's not all that difficult, although there are times which it is difficult, especially when dealing with like family members. Um, so like as far as professional relationships go, I never really bring up like faith or anything like that. Although I was on this one particular project at one time where uh, they all kind of really got along together pretty well. And I was kind of the black sheep in the crowd because I didn't believe in a God, but I still wanted to take part in these conversations. So what would happen would be they would start up a conversation and then I would throw in my 2 cents. And whenever it concerned either some kind of progressive topic or the topic of religion or whatnot, I would always, I would usually end up getting screamed at, or hounded. And so, like, I remember one time we were discussing gay Boy Scout leaders, and apparently the guy that was standing right next to me really didn't like the whole idea of a Boy Scout leader being gay. And so like I was just being like, well, they're not really all that different than anybody else, so there shouldn't be any kind of problem with it. And he was just like, I don't want no gay Boy Scout leader leading my kid. And I'm just sitting there like, God damn it, man. Could you just fucking chill out for a minute? Like, I was just like, okay, well, I'm leaving at that. Like, I didn't curse at him or anything, but I was just like, I'm leaving, I'm going to walk away. And then like, one of the guys that I talked to regularly there knew that I was an atheist. And, whenever something would come up, he'd come over and kind of really hound me about it all the time. And so, I mean, there was that situation, but that is not really all that indicative of, every work relationship I've had. Right now on the current project that I'm on, it is, I mean, everybody's kind of close, but at the same time, like, it never gets brought up, like the whole religious thing. They're all pretty keen to stay away from those kind of subjects. Although, I do have to laugh on occasion whenever they bring up something and I hear it in the office, because some of them, aren't.
Sorry
They're
to
not.
interrupt. You're kind of crackling a bit. You start
Okay.
crackling.
Yeah, hold on one second. I can fix that. Test, test, test. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and you're not crackling, so we're good.
Okay, yeah. I just see the as far as tech goes, all you got to do is unplug, like turn it off and turn it back on, and that's pretty much what
Yeah. Will you try turning it? Hello, IT. Will you try turning it off and on again?
Yeah, exactly.
I love the IT crowd. Oh, that's funny. Um,
Uh,
but yeah,
but 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 yeah, as far as like being an atheist in North Alabama, um, you know that's the work side of it, and then you got family, and sometimes like I guess family members don't really realize that they're asking something of like either me or KC that they wouldn't ask like a Christian. And so like for instance, at one point, I believe KC was asked not to wear a certain armband at a family function, and you know that really kind of rubbed her the wrong way, because it's like you wouldn't ask somebody to not wear a crucifix, or not a crucifix, sorry, a cross, like a cross necklace, huh? A crucifix is a cross necklace with Jesus on it. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, a crucifix or a cross necklace. Like they wouldn't ask people not to do that. But you know, if you have something that says atheist on it or something like that, they're like, well, please don't wear that. And so it's more or less like, okay, it's fine for you to be an atheist, but you really don't need to talk about it. And you know, that is really where you know, the mantra that we kind of came up with for the GE channel of stand up and use your voice, because we find that a lot of people, they're like, that's fine if you want to be an atheist, but shut the fuck up about it. And it's just kind of like, no, I'm not going to shut up. There's no reason for me to shut up. It's fine for me to be an atheist, and it's fine for us to disagree on the whole God question. And so that's kind of the family aspect of it. Like friends, as far as friends, there are a lot of people up here that don't believe, and they're growing. And while I don't really have a lot of friends like outside of work or anything like that, not any local ones at least, I know that there's a lot of people that are subscribed to my channel and whatnot that are in the North Alabama area. And it's just that for the past 10 years or so, I was really just, I would go to work and I would come home. I would go to work and I would come home. So I was kind of secluded, you know, myself. And I haven't always been like that, but it's really just been the past 10 or 11 years or so that it's kind of been like that.
yeah, I understand that fully. Because my family's the same way. Like, I mean, it's like people are like, well, why do you talk about it on Facebook? Because I post a lot of, at times anti-theist stuff, and from there, it's like, well, why do you talk about it? I'm like, you're the one who is posting religious Bible verse. I'm like, because it started off with me quoting the Bible. So I said, let's play quote the Bible. Because I always saw all the good verses, but no one ever wanted to bring up the not so great ones. And that's partly why I did the one video I did recently about why the Old Testament should be followed, is because it's just, yeah, so many, because so many people are like, well, that's Old Testament. I'm like, that is, and I've looked to see if anyone did a good debunk video on it, a good argument. I'm like, no one's done. I'm like, okay, I gotta do that one, because I hear it so many times, but no one's ever gone through and showed why that's a bad argument.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the next question is, what made you want to become an engineer?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, you know, this goes back to when I was in high school, because, you know, I had a friend who I was pretty close with, and he was married already. He had been out of high school, I think, a couple of years, and he had already gotten married and whatnot. And his wife was actually becoming an engineer, and that right there is what kind of first clued me into the whole idea of like being an engineer or whatnot. But in high school, I just knew that I wanted something to do with like science, or physical science rather, because one of the strongest points of mine was actually physical science. So like when I was in middle school, I was on the science Olympiad team, and I dominated the physical science portion. You know, being able to do all of the math and everything like that to figure stuff out, I would get it done like really quick, and so I would always come in first for the physical science portion of it, which that's of course opposite to my performance in like botany, or identifying insects, because like I remember specifically going out there, and we went to the University of Alabama in Huntsville to do this, and it's like every tree that I would come to, I'd be like, yep, that's a dogwood. I recognize it. It's like, no, it's got pine needles, John. Dogwood.
I understand that. I loved like biology. I was good at entomology, horticulture, all that stuff. Yeah, forget it. But physics and calculus, I actually in high school, because I didn't do my homework in algebra 2, so I got like a C minus, and I wanted to do calc the next semester. And the teacher's like, no, you can't do it. You got a C minus, and it's because you didn't do homework. And if you don't do your homework in calc, it's gonna bite you even more, because I relied on my tests and I aced my tests. So, but physics, I loved all of that. Yeah, that's actually one class I'm dreading is chem. I'm horrible at chemistry when I go for my engineering.
Yeah, which chemistry? Because like the
Any
first
of them.
any of them,
I'm
I'll
horrible
say.
at chemistry.
Well, organic chemistry is not that bad, because like organic chemistry is a lot of like, I guess, chemistry math. And you know, just as long as you understand the rules of it, you know, it's really easy to grasp, because I mean, you're basically adding chemicals together and getting all of the byproducts and everything on the other side of the equation. But like chemistry, I didn't do like hot at chemistry,
Yeah.
but I think I managed to get away with like a B in that particular class.
Yeah.
I know it had like a lab with it, and like I think my lab partner chose me because I looked nerdy as fuck.
You don't look much. I'm sorry. You don't look like how I envision the typical nerd. But hey, I mean, if, yeah, I mean, like I said, yeah, I just have Chem 1, 2, and 3. That's all it says for chemistry for what I need. So beyond that, I don't know what all those entail. But yeah, sorry, kind of getting sidetracked. But yeah, I'm ADD OS, attention deficit. Ooh, that's shiny. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what made you choose the field of software engineering?
Well, so when I was so after I got out of high school, I went to community college for a couple of years. And the reason why I did that was because it would be cheaper, and it would be the same classes that I could get at like a university, but they would, you know, cost like five or two to five times more than like a community college thing. So I went to community college, and I was dead set on being an electrical engineer. I had that idea in my head, and so I went through that entire time doing that. And then when I got to UAH, I started down the path of electrical engineering. I started going through that, and then I got to, I believe it was circuits 1, and I realized, wow, I am not good at electrical engineering. And like for any of those, like the EE programs, the electrical and computer engineering programs, you had to take like the basic entry level classes of like programming and circuits. I found that I was able to complete my programming class so I was taking a summer class for programming, right? I took the entire class in a month, and the rest of the summer, all I had to do was like show up for tests. And so I figuring that I apparently knew a hell of a lot about you know, programming and doing the computer side of it. I decided to go computer engineering, and so I pretty much made the switch pretty early in my university career, of being an EE major. I switched to CE, and I got my bachelor's in computer engineering. And then the job that I worked for then, and I still work for now, they were like, "Hey, we'll send you back to school for your master's, but you got to get a master's in software engineering." And I was like, "Well, that works for me," because I was very keen on software. Like I could program laps around things. Like I remember right after I got my master's in software engineering, I was stuck with managing the credit cards for where I was. And what I ended up doing was I created my own like purchasing like software that worked on ASP.NET. And I mean, I had it to where I could go in, I could put in an order, I could have dates where I ordered it, where I picked it up, and where people signed for it and everything. Like I had it to where I could scan in documents and store them like in a database. Like I was so bored with doing the actual job that I just wrote up a whole web application to help me do it. And that I was eventually able to move away from that and actually get into more actual programming related stuff. But I know that's really kind of off topic as to what made me do the software engineering thing, but I guess just my proclivity for being able to write programs really easily and being able to grasp that and manage it so well, it convinced, like, I was like, this is what I need to be doing.
Okay. Yeah, and the next question is, what is your favorite part of software engineering?
Oh, wow. Let's see. My favorite part of software engineering has got to be the actual programming portion of it because I kind of see software engineering kind of has two different sides. One side of it is the actual work of writing the programs, uh, you know, um, uh, um, figuring out interesting ways to do it or figuring out ways to accomplish a single goal. And then you have documentation. And I am horrible, horrible at documentation. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that it's not important; it's very important.
Oh,
But like,
yeah.
but yeah, it can be very tedious, and for me at least, I feel like it really gets in the way of like doing actual work, at
Oh, yeah.
least what I feel is actual work, because I really love doing the programming portion of it. But then you also have to like keep up with your time. You've got to do all of these documents in order to describe your software. You've got to write up test reports and test descriptions, and then you got to do all these things. Like right now, I'm kind of in a lull at work, and we have this automatic testing software, Test Complete, where we actually use JavaScript in order to automate tests. And so I get to write code that automatically tests the software that I'm helping build, and that's really interesting to me. Like I really like doing that, but what I have to do is I've got to use like the test descriptions for things in order to write that code. So it's very important. I just am really bad at it, like the documentation part. I can do the programming part.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you might just answered the second part of the question, but we'll see. What is your least favorite part of the engineering of software engineering?
Oh yeah. It's definitely like documentation and keeping up with like how much time I spent on a certain it's keeping up with the how much time I spent on a certain activity for a certain project. Like I don't know, like what I do is I just start working, and I get so engrossed with working that like I lose track of time. Like I don't really like I'll start out the day and I'll be working on a problem, and I'll finish the day like only working on that one problem, because a lot of times in it there's not just a simple, oh, here's the answer. A lot of times you got to do a lot of research, like on Google and Stack Exchange and all this other stuff, in order to figure out that you just needed to set one particular
Oh,
variable to be
yeah.
one thing,
Oh,
and
gotcha.
it could
Yes.
take you all day to get there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You bring back some memories from school with because I went for drafting and I have my tech certificate. But yeah, just our teacher required, you know, on one project we did, he required documentation of how much did you how much did you spend here? How time do you spend here? How much I need cost materials? I need this. I need. It was for a steel project that we were doing, but you were talking about Dr. Trump. Like, oh God, just yeah, don't bring back those nightmares. Yeah, so I fully because he wanted to make it as much like a real life situation as he could to prepare you for when you get out of here. Here's what they're going to make you do. Now I want you to do it. So yeah, but the next question is, you are a mythicist, right?
Right.
Okay, and what exactly is that?
Well, mythicist, at least how it's used generally now, is to denote somebody that thinks that Jesus was a myth. Um, but I mean, I think that you can expound upon that and just include like myths in general, like somebody that's just that likes, learning about myths and learning where they come from and everything like that. Like in a wider, more general definition is that, but in more specific, it's about how Jesus is a myth.
Okay. What was one of the things, or what exactly made you take that exact position?
Well, basically, I had been an atheist for a while and I, love doing research on like the arguments for God and the arguments against God. And so it got to the point where I was like, well, I don't accept that God exists because there's no good evidence to suggest that he does exist. So why wouldn't I apply that same kind of logic to Jesus? Because I had always just considered Jesus to be a real person. Like, oh yeah, had to be a real person.
Yeah.
And during my conversations online with people, I found myself being like, well, look, maybe I need to have evidence to say, oh, hey, yes, well, we know Jesus existed. And I wanted to have that evidence in my back pocket so that I could be like, look, here's the evidence. And so what I did was I set out and I tried to find the evidence for it, but none of the evidence was just compelling. And I found David Fitzgerald's 10, was it nailed 10 Christian myths about Jesus, and I read that cover to cover, and I was totally engrossed in it. I was focused on it, and I found that it was so interesting that people were just accepting like, oh, the easiest explanation is that Jesus existed, but if you apply the same skepticism that you have for God's existence that you do for Jesus's existence, for me at least, I didn't find any good evidence to say that yes, Jesus did definitely exist.
Yeah. Um, okay. One point I always hear for the existence of Jesus, and I know you've touched on it a bit. But for those who might not know the argument, I was going to ask you these few. But Josephus, in his book, he mentions Jesus. Why is that not the supposed Jesus of the Bible, or what's in there that makes it not be Jesus? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so Josephus has a lot of things wrong with it. There's two references to Jesus. There's the Testimonium Flavianum, and then there is the one where it's talking about James, the brother of Christ, later on. Now, the Testimonium has a lot of different problems with it. For one thing, it is so apparently Christian in the text that we have now that even historicists say, well, it was definitely touched up by a later Christian author, but the original one looked more like this. And it had a bunch of the Messiah and all the magical stuff stripped out, but it still said, oh, there was Jesus. He was, crucified and all that other stuff. But the problems with the Testimonium are a lot more complicated than that, because right before that passage in Josephus, he talks about how Pilate has his guards dress as these protesters that were protesting this water issue, and Pilate has these soldiers kill a whole bunch of protesters. And then you have the magical commercial for Jesus, and then the next paragraph down it says, and then about this time there was another sad calamity. And the way that it was referenced, even in even in the non-Christian version of the testimonium, it doesn't really sound like a sad calamity. It doesn't sound like Josephus is referring to that paragraph. It sounds like Josephus is referring to the paragraph above it. And in fact, if you take out the testimonium, you'll see that the paragraphs flow seamlessly together, because while they're talking about different subjects, the exit of the first paragraph compared to the entrance of the other paragraph, they flow. It doesn't seem to break any kind of thought process. But with the testimonium in there, it just seems like it just doesn't fit. Like it seems like it breaks up the flow of thought. Also, another thing to note here is that the first person to even bring this up is Eusebius of Caesarea, who is known to forge a lot of different accounts and to change his church history. He inherited his bit of Josephus from Origen, who regularly talked about, Jesus, his existence, and just the real person of Jesus. And so you would think that he would have at least mentioned this in some way, because it's such an, I guess, a quote unquote great piece of evidence for, Jesus and what he did. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be, he's arguing against somebody who's a mythicist. It just has to be, well, no, here's my Lord. Josephus talks about him doing this thing right here in this paragraph. And this would be arguments against pagans or anybody else, I guess. But you just don't see that from Origen. And the first person that actually mentions it is Eusebius. Eusebius also forged the account of, I think maybe Constantine. Was it Constantine that saw like the P-shaped cross in the sky, and he was ordered by Jesus to like kill people or something?
I'm not for sure. Sorry, world history is not my strong suit.
Yeah.
Revolutionary War, that's where I excel at. So yeah, you're asking the wrong person.
Well, yeah, Eusebius forged that particular one because it started out as like a group hallucination, and then Eusebius made it a personal revelation. And so Eusebius isn't the best person to have brought it up first. It really casts a lot of doubt on it. And I'm not saying that I know for a 100% certain that it was like inserted by Eusebius. I'm saying that the probability that he inserted it is much greater than Josephus actually writing that down the way that it was. And then the second mention of Jesus, it actually is grammatically more like an interpolation from a marginal note, rather than them actually wanting to point out that this was James, a brother of Jesus or whatnot, because of the way that the grammar is structured, the way that it's referenced and everything like that. It's plainly an interpolation. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. The next one is the other main one that I've heard that I want to ask you on is Tacitus. And and I believe he was one of the ones that made claims to Jesus as well, and him being real.
Right. Well, yeah, sorry, I wasn't laughing at you, obviously.
Yeah.
I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at because my debate with Inspired Philosophy, Tacitus seemed to be the only thing that he wanted to talk about the entire time.
Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar. Like I watched one of your, I think it was one of your Facebook Live videos the other day, that you did a while, I think it was about 2 weeks ago. But it was the one who kept saying Tacitus or something like
Tacitus.
that. I was like, wow, okay, that's okay.
Yeah,
I almost said it Tacitus just for that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I wasn't laughing at you. My Inspired Philosophy.
I figured there was something there, but yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Inspired Philosophy. He only wanted to focus on Tacitus, or Tacitus. And with Tacitus, the thing is that like there's no other authors like at the time, no other historians or no other people that were writing that were actually in Rome mentioned that Nero was blaming the Christians for it. There's also the problem with the fact that it doesn't act. I think in one part it says Christus maybe, but actually the vowel there, the I, isn't actually in the text. It's actually missing. But the one before it talks about Crestus, which there were other people that were talking about Crestus like 10 years before that. So I mean, that's not really a big thing. It's just that was a name at the time. Or Christians, I think is what the Tacitus was calling them. But my main point with Tacitus is that even if you take that at face value, that it really was talking about Christians and Jesus Christ, it doesn't actually cement Jesus in history, because it's just talking about like, oh, here are these people, they're called Christians, they believe this guy Christ like led them or founded their religion or whatnot. So it doesn't actually mention that it was a real person in history. Also, Tacitus would have been was talking to Pliny the Younger at the time, who was interrogating Christians. And so, I mean, he could have easily gotten information about the Christians and what they believed. So, there was no reason for Tacitus to really question that Christians were existing at the time, or that they believe a person called Christ died for their sins. So, I mean, a lot of people want to say that it definitely cements Jesus in history, but it really doesn't. It's really just saying that Christians existed, and that's if you take it at face value.
Yeah, and yeah, it makes sense. I just was thinking about that. What is the best argument you've? Yeah, and I was thinking about that, and that's like, like if you were saying, like if I wrote something about Hindus, I said, yeah, Hindus believe in Lord Krishna. I mean, that's not saying Lord Krishna's real. That's just saying, hey, there's people, they're Hindus, and they believe in Lord Krishna, Vishnu. Um, you know, I don't know however many other Hindu gods there are. But the next question I have is, what is the best argument you've heard for the existence of God?
Best argument for the existence of God. Well, I ask this of people too on occasion, and it's always the hardest thing to answer, because it's
Yeah,
like there's no good arguments for God.
yeah,
But I would have to say the best argument for God is the whole idea that he's supernatural and he exists outside of reality, because that kind of pushes God into the realm of, well, we can never prove him, so you just have to believe on faith. And it really exposes the fact that any belief in God relies on an unfounded adherence to the idea that he exists, which is basically what faith is. It's believing something without any kind of evidence or anything like that to suggest that it actually is that. You just have to trust people that have told you that he does exist. And while on occasion, I mean, I think that trusting somebody that personally is fine. But I think that if somebody came up to me that I've really trusted and they were like, hey, there's a big goddamn hot dog in the sky that's going to kill all of us, I think that I'm going to question him and ask for evidence, because it doesn't really match anything that we've ever seen before. So we would need a lot of evidence in order to justify that.
yeah. So I'm just envisioning a giant hot dog in the sky with lasers shooting at us. Yeah, I have a very random mind. But yeah, what is the worst argument that you've heard for God?
Oh man, worst argument. There's
Yeah,
so many to pick
yeah,
from.
yeah.
Um, I would have to say that it's the watchmaker argument, I guess. Just the whenever somebody's like, but a design needs a
Oh yeah.
designer.
Oh God,
Like,
yes. I will agree with you 100% there.
yeah, well, I mean, because you have to throw out like so much like science and evidence and logic in general in order to say, oh, hey, look, this looks designed, therefore there was a designer and that designer's God. Not only do you do a leap in logic over that, but you also have to disregard all the scientific evidence that shows us that like biological systems can arise, from nature. Like nature can put these things together. Nature can, put the human body together eventually.
Yeah.
Like you have to disregard so much evidence in order to have that position that it just baffles me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love whenever that's one of my favorite ones to go through and take apart because of being a drafter and having the design background. I'm like, no, no. Okay, rule number one in design work: mistakes cost lives. If you don't believe me, ask the people who died in the Kansas City Skywalk crash. I think
Mhm.
that those people might beg to differ about a design flaw. But yeah, the next one is, what is your favorite argument to debunk from religion?
Oh, favorite argument to debunk from religion. I guess it would have to be the flat Earth thing, because there's a lot of people out there that use the Bible to say that the Earth is flat and that the sun, revolves around us. And I have to say that's the best one, because of the fact that everybody that adheres to that, they seem to be so uneducated that they can't even properly communicate. And it just gets to a point, like for instance, I've got a video where I actually interviewed a flat Earth guy, and I tried to start off like just asking him questions, being very polite and everything. And it's like after I showed that I was not going to just sit back and let him, say all of these unfounded things without being challenged, he just immediately throws out like the word faggot. He starts calling me that, and I'm just like, okay, well, you can call me that all you want to. I don't care. That doesn't prove your argument at all. And so he spent like the next 40 minutes basically insulting me every single chance he could get and misrepresenting my side of it. And so like I had fun with that, because it's just like it's so childish and myopic that you really just have to sit back and laugh about it,
Yeah,
because of how hilariously dumb it is.
yeah. And the other half of that is obviously, what is your least favorite argument to debunk, where it's just like, oh God, here we are again.
Let's see. Okay, least favorite argument to debunk. Um, I don't know. I like debunking bad arguments. I really like showing people um how they're wrong in whatever they're saying. Pulling out that evidence. But let's see. Uh, I would have to say that it's probably the whole idea that God has morality written on all of our hearts. Because, like, I don't know, that just seems so that's used so many times that I just, whenever it gets brought up, I literally groan out loud, because I mean, obviously, God hasn't written anything on our hearts. There's sociopaths and psychopaths out there that show that they don't have a moral compass, or they do have a moral compass, but it's different and it's a lot more lenient than other people. And then you just have the general difference in people in general. And it's just one of those arguments where I'm just like, okay, well, I mean, that's not right. And there's almost literally nothing that I can say about it to debunk it, because it's just so obvious. I think that any argument where where it's like where it's just so obvious that it's wrong, I think that those are the ones that I hate the most.
Yeah. And the next one, and you kind of touched on this, but I'm not sure if it might be a different one for this, because that was for religious. Just in general, what is your favorite type of person to go through and debunk, and why, such as young Earth creationists, anti-evolutionists, flat earthers, etc.?
Well, the funnest ones I would say aren't a particular subject, but I would say that they're just the ones that are on the fringe. For instance, this past Friday, I posted a video about the resurrection of Jesus for Easter tomorrow, and
I
it was,
watched that.
huh?
That was a good one.
Yeah, it was so out there that it's like, I liked watching it because I had never heard it before. And it's those kind of arguments that I like to laugh at and whatnot, because it's like, I mean, how else are you going to get that a black hole formed
Yeah,
around Jesus and cause him to resurrect, and that caused the Shroud of Turin, like,
yeah.
to have his image on it?
I'm still trying to figure that one. That one is still. I'm like, what? I don't have a physics degree. I haven't taken a college physics class. I only took a high school physics class first semester, and I'm still trying to figure that one out myself. That's like, I, like that's not wrong. That's not just plain wrong. That's not even just you're absolutely freaking wrong. That's just like that's not even wrong. It's so wrong.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But
It's
but I mean, I love those kind of videos, because then, you really don't have to do a lot of research. Like, I did research for that video prior to making it. But you don't really have to do a lot of research for those crazy kind of
yeah,
videos. And like, I guess that's what makes it different from some of the flat earth stuff. Like, I don't know. Okay, a good example would be the flat earth video that I posted earlier this week. Had the guy and the girl who was saying that the ocean is a saltwater battery and the moon is a diode, and we have a glass dome that is powered by the aurora borealis.
I've
That
heard
is
that
so
one.
far out there that I don't have to do any kind of research
Yeah.
for that, uh,
I
because it's so ridiculous.
Wow. Okay, I will have to look at that one later. 'Cause I think I missed that one somehow. I either it was either that or that argument was just so stupid. I tried to forget it. Um, but yeah, what the next one is? What is your least favorite one of those types of people to do? Like if you just like, oh god, here, I got to do this video because it's so bad. But it's like, oh, I just really hate doing these arguments.
Um, I think that those are would be more or less reserved for specific people, because like,
Okay.
before, like with Joshua Feuerstein,
Yeah.
like I've made several videos about Joshua Feuerstein, but now, like, of course he doesn't really put out a lot of stupid videos anymore, but it
Yeah.
just got to the point where I was just like, oh god damn, this guy again.
Yeah. Like,
I've kind of gotten to the same point with like Greg Locke.
oh yeah.
Of course, I'm not going to be doing any. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah. I when I found out what he did, I was just like, oh, you low life. Yeah, I was like, oh, can I have 10 minutes in a room alone with him with a metal baseball bat and him tied to a chair? Just yeah, I have no, I don't have any love lost for him. I thought he was an idiot when I first saw him, and then when I found out that that's what he was doing, oh, he's like, oh, I hate this guy even more.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I'm at that point with him. Like, anytime, something comes up about him, like he puts out a new video and somebody else picks it up or whatnot. Like, I'm just like, oh god, this asshole again. And you know, I guess, yeah, it's just really reserved for specific people, not necessarily specific arguments. Because one of the big things about me is that I feel like we need to remain consistent on refuting bad arguments. And so, while some people out there might feel like it's beating a dead horse to like respond to the argument from design, or any of these other really horrible arguments, I feel like we need to, remain consistent in responding and providing information, because you never know when somebody will come across whatever you've put together, and that'll be the first time that they see it. So, having a lot of content on one particular question, you end up reaching a lot more people. And so
Yeah.
that's why I never feel like it's beating a dead horse or anything.
Yeah. The next one is who is your favorite flat earther to debunk and why?
Oh, it's got to be Delano TV. Delano TV. I mean, he's got ridiculous fucking thoughts, and plus he always, it's like he uses "suck my nuts" as a period. He really does, because
Oh yeah,
anytime he
that guy.
does,
I was about to ask who was he there with that. Like, oh yeah, the suck my nuts.
oh yeah,
It's
no,
funny.
like, yeah. It's gotten to the point with him though. If you go to his Delano TV, right? You go to his channel and you watch like his last flat Earth video or something like that. He does like a little intro thing, and then he rolls his actual video intro. At the end of the video intro, he's got a swirling 3D "suck my nuts" is literally, or suck my balls maybe, but it's something to that effect. He's got it in his intro now.
Okay, okay, that's funny. And then my last question I have, and then Chad, if you want to start asking some questions, if you have any for him, go ahead and start asking. I also have a few after this, but my last question that I have for you is, how do I join the Skeptic Mafia and get paid by them like you do on your live streams?
You know, I mean, you got to be in with someone to get
Yeah,
paid by the Skeptic Mafia. I mean, Skeptic Mafia follows me and I follow them on Twitter,
yeah,
but you know, I don't know. We'll see if we can get you into the union.
yeah. Yeah, I am honored. I did get followed by Skeptic Mafia today, so maybe I might have some money coming my way. But in the chat earlier on, someone asked, if GE had to design the human body from the ground up, what would he do with the design? Assuming you have a brain and get protein to it, I think, or protein, PROTEAN to it.
Maybe it's protein.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might have been a typo. I'm
Okay.
thinking protein. That's what I'm
Well,
thinking.
Well, I mean, like, there's several things. Like, if you were to actually design a body, and what I would do, I mean, knowing what we know now about the flaws of our body, like, you know, we could have a clotting system that doesn't ever break down. You know, with the genetic code, like with um uh what's the blood clotting thing? Well, no, it's not hemoglobin. It's hemophilia.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was like, I'm not on the nursing field. You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like hemophilia, preventing
Yeah,
hemophilia. I mean, you could, you could figure out a way to, make sure that we never succumb to that. I mean, brain cancer. I mean, you could, well, yeah, yeah, for me personally, making sure pancreas always worked. I mean, there's so many different flaws in the human body that, I mean, if you were to design, or redesign the human body, I mean, I think that it would take an incredibly long amount of time, because I mean, there's so many problems with the human body that you would have to address them individually.
yeah. The next one that was asked was, are you getting threats from people who think the Earth is flat or something else?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, sometimes. I mean, mainly in the comment sections, it's never somebody that messages the page. Although the guy that I said that I have an interview with that I'm waiting to put up on my channel, I mean, he messaged me in the inbox and he had like strong words to say about me in
Yeah,
the inbox. And so when I actually got him on stream, I was like, hold up. Before we start, I want to read back your messages and see what you have to say about them. And so I read them back to him, and he's just like, yep, I meant all of that. And he, of course, he wasn't immediately like that, but it eventually got to the part where it just broke down, where he was just yelling at me on stream.
yeah,
And he couldn't see me, but I was laughing the entire time. Like I was not like sweating or anything like that. Like I was just sitting there like covering my mouth, trying not to let him hear me laugh.
yeah. Oh, I understand that. With a lot of people on Twitter, they're like, "You're going to hell," and blah blah blah. I'm like, I just sit there and laugh. I'm like, "Yep, yep." And as I've been playing a lot of Borderlands and Borderlands 2 and pre-sequel and that lately, I just like, "Yep." And when you die, Buttstein is going to go trample all over you forever. So yeah, congratulations. And the sad thing is, Buttstein has more evidence for her than their god does, because I can actually produce Buttstein on command on the game. So
Yeah.
yeah. And the next one was high level or low level programming language preference. I'm not familiar with that,
Ooh.
but I'm assuming you understand it.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, high level programming language. I'm guessing they would be talking about like C sharp or
Okay.
other kind of languages like that. And I mean, I like those, but I also really love like hardware kind of languages. Which I mean, it's kind of gotten to the point where you can use like C or C++ to do hardware code, but a lot of hardware code usually is either a specific compiler or assembly language, which I mean, I really, like I said, I really like hardware programming, and I haven't been able to really do that at my job. But like for my capstone of my bachelor's degree, we actually did a heart monitor where we had a heart thing that we strapped to our chest, and then we had to program a dongle to receive the heart information, and then we also had to on the computer write a program to interpret that information and plot it like on a graph. And so I did all of the programming for the dongle, for the transceiver that we had as an intermediary between the heart thing and the computer. I did the programming for the actual program that displayed the graph and everything like that. And it was really fun and interesting to do because like you're mixing like writing software, but it's software that manipulates hardware. And I don't know, for me, that is just the most intriguing thing ever. Being able to control like real things with software code. And I don't know, that's just me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just, oh, my brain's immature. I'll fully admit this. 'Cause when you mentioned dongle, I was just like, yeah, you couldn't go in one street without making a dick joke, could you? Yeah. Hey, at least I'm immature, so at least I know that. But it's not looking like we really have any other questions in the chat, so I think that might do it for us. Um, thank you very much for coming on today, GE. I really do appreciate it, and uh, I, you're actually probably the one I will fully admit I have been the most excited to talk to so far because you are part of the reason why I decided to go and try and get my engineering degree. So um, I do have a lot of respect for you on that there.
Oh
Um,
well, I mean, I'm glad that you're going to be pursuing that. I mean, engineering, for at least for me, is a very fulfilling
yeah.
thing, and it's also pretty awesome to be like, hey, I'm an engineer. And of course, though, like lately, I've actually been getting like people saying you need to take engineer out of your title because you don't have that professional engineer's pinky fucking ring.
Oh,
And like I don't know, like a lot of people, they want to like doubt whether or not you're actually an engineer. At
yeah,
least that's been my experience so far, at least online. But I think that's more of a just a jab, like an
yeah,
insult. Like
yeah.
you're
They're
not
trying
really an
to
engineer.
get yeah, yeah. No, I remember. I don't know what it was. I think it was one of your YouTube videos where so it was like, you're an educator or something like that, and that you hold like all your degrees in that as like 3 or 4 or something like that. I'm like, okay, that's funny. I remember which one it was. You might know which one that is, but yeah. But thank you very much for coming on today, and thank you everybody in the chat for joining us. It
No,
was, like I said,
I'm trust.
real honor to have
I'm yeah, no, yeah, I love being here. I love talking to people like this. So I
you.
appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. All right, and I think that will do it for us. I guess I'll steal your line bit. Thank you for joining us, and everybody remember to stand up and use your voice.